Saudi Arabia's air defense forces have shot down a ballistic missile fired towards the kingdom's capital by Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi rebels. The Saudi-led military coalition involved in the civil war in Yemen confirmed it had intercepted the missile south of Riyadh. A spokesman for the Houthis wrote on Twitter that the rebels had fired a Volcano 2H missile towards the Al Yamama royal palace, targeting a meeting of Saudi leaders. Witnesses described hearing an explosion as the missile fired from inside Yemeni territory was destroyed overhead. Footage posted on social media shows a plume of smoke in the air after the projectile was intercepted by Saudi Arabia's military. Shrapnel fell from the sky and landed in neighborhoods, but there were no reports of injuries or damage. The government-run Center for International Communication wrote on Twitter, "Coalition forces confirm intercepting an Iranian Houthi missile targeting south of Riyadh. There are no reported casualties at this time." Last month, Saudi Arabia's missile defense system shot down a ballistic missile fired towards Riyadh's King Khalid International Airport by rebels in Yemen, where a civil war has left at least 10,000 dead from fighting, disease and widespread famine. A civil war in Yemen, the Arab world's poorest country, has left at least 10,000 people dead from fighting, disease and widespread famine. The war has been raging since Houthi rebels ousted Yemen's pro-Saudi government in 2015 as two factions fought for control of the government. The Houthis and their allies have been fighting forces loyal to UN-backed President Abdrabbuh Mansur Hadi, who was forced to flee as the rebels seized the capital Sana'a. The bloody war is part of a wider struggle between regional powers Saudi Arabia and Iran, and none of those involved appear close to claiming a victory. The protracted conflict has left thousands dead following airstrikes and a blockade at Yemen's ports, which has allowed hunger and disease to spread. Terror groups Al-Qaeda and ISIS have also launched deadly attacks and seized territory amid the conflict. Saudi Arabia is leading a military coalition which has received weaponry from allies including the UK and US, while Iran has been accused of supplying ballistic missiles to the Houthis. The Saudi-led coalition has included the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Kuwait, Egypt, Jordan, Morocco, and Sudan, according to UN sanction monitors. Qatar has been expelled from the coalition. Calls for a peaceful resolution have been ignored and fighting has flared again in the last 2 months, with the death toll rising and millions still in need of humanitarian assistance. There has been a surge in civilian casualties in recent weeks after former President Ali Abdullah Saleh was killed by the rebels. He and his forces had been aligned with them but switched sides and turned against them. Nikki Haley, the U.S. envoy to the United Nations, presented evidence last week which she said proved that Iran had supplied short-range ballistic missiles to the Shiite rebels which were then fired at Saudi Arabia. She said debris recovered after a missile was fired at Riyadh's civilian airport in November and another was fired in July earlier this year was from Iranian-made Qaem missiles. She told reporters the weapons might as well have had "Made in Iran" stickers. Supplying arms to the rebels would be a violation of a UN resolution. The UK, US and other allies have supplied weaponry to the Saudi-led coalition which has been accused of killing innocent civilians through airstrikes and a blockade of ports. Related video: Saudi Arabia shoots down ballistic missile near Riyadh last month. Earlier today the UN Human Rights Office announced it had verified the killings of 115 Yemeni civilians and other non-combatants in airstrikes carried out over 11 days by the Saudi-led coalition. Rights Office spokesman Rupert Colville said UN officials are deeply concerned about a surge in civilian casualties from airstrikes after the killing earlier this month of Yemen's former president, Ali Abdullah Saleh. Mr. Saleh was killed by the rebels, known as Houthis, after apparently switching sides and turning against his former allies. Mr. Colville told reporters the killings occurred in 4 northern areas from December 6 to 16, including airstrikes on Yemen's rebel-run TV channel, a hospital in the port city of Hodeidah and a series targeting a prison in Sana'a that killed 43. Meanwhile, a UN boss has warned that up to 7 million people are at risk of starving if the Saudi-led coalition leading the fight against the Houthis continues to block humanitarian aid access to neighboring Yemen. Air, land and seaports to the Arabian Peninsula country were closed to stem the flow of arms to the rebels. Humanitarian groups have called for a ceasefire so they can help thousands of civilians who are trapped by fighting.